Here we are once again. Welcome back, digital world, to another episode of Spliced In Later. Less than 24 hours since our last review, and it's time for another one. I'm trying to record this quickly because I can't have the fan on while I record this. That's all you'll hear while I record this. But it's bloody sweltering in my front room. It's hot. I apologize to the cats for having to have left you behind while I was at the nice cool movie theater where you were dealing with this. So we're going to get right into it. Today we are reviewing the newest film from the DC Extended Universe films, the sequel to Shazam, Fury of the Gods, starring Zachary Levi and I guess Asher Angel, but not really. We'll get into that. So before we get into all the review of the movie itself, bit of backstory and history for this stuff. As people may or may not be aware, I think most people are, but you never know. The DC Extended Universe is DC's attempts at trying to do the success that the MCU had with building their own shared universe of superhero movies. Infamously launching with Zack Snyder's Man of Steel in 2013, starring Henry Cavill as Superman. But unlike the MCU, it was not handled effectively well. There wasn't a lot of patience. There wasn't a lot of pacing. After that Superman movie, they jumped straight into a Batman-Superman fight movie with Wonder Woman jammed in there as well. And then rushed straight into a Justice League that was hampered by crisis teams behind the scenes. A Suicide Squad movie that was stripped back and had a new coat of paint put on to take away the darkness and make it more like Guardians of the Galaxy, and then just becoming an absolute disaster. Zack Snyder having to leave Justice League, Joss Whedon coming on, meaning you had tonally completely different films. The years later, we got our own Zack Snyder's Justice League, which is a million times better, but a little too late at this point. And then, hit and misses when it came to DCU movies. Wonder Woman, good. Wonder Woman 1984, not good. Birds of Prey, surprisingly good. Aquaman, so. And now here we are as we get into what is essentially the final year of this world. The latest turnover of CEOs at Warner Brothers, infamously with the Batgirl cancellation due to tax purposes. We now have brand new heads for the DC movie world, namely James Gunn and the other one, Peter Safran? I don't know. I don't care. I remember James Gunn. And they're basically starting again, tearing down what's been made, effectively shuttering everything DC, even the television shows like The Flash and Doom Patrol and everything like that. And they're streamlining. They're attempting to start again and do it properly with a properly executed DC universe of shared movies that works. Knowing James Gunn, I think it's going to go off pretty well, but we'll have to wait and see. But until then, we have the mess of all these other DC films that had been commissioned, filmed, postponed due to pandemics, still waiting in the wings to come out. And you have that issue of why should we care when this is all leading to nowhere with the whole reboot of the universe. The only movie that's mildly interesting is The Flash that's coming out, because it has the potential with the whole Flashpoint thing that it's going to reset the universe, which will lead into James Gunn's new thing. But Ezra Miller sucks, so no one's probably going to go and see that movie. Unlikely. I'm sure it'll bring in billions and billions of dollars, but everyone probably shouldn't see the movie because Ezra Miller sucks. Meanwhile, on top of that, you've got an Aquaman 2, which is coming out after that point. Will it be in the new DC world? Is it a sequel to Aquaman then? Or is it something brand new? Test screenings say it sucks. Who knows? It's really hard to approach this sort of stuff now. There's such a cloud hanging over this thing. But before that, we have Shazam 2, or Shazam Fury of the Gods. Now, the first Shazam came out in 2019, ironically a month before Captain Marvel. Ironic in the sense that they're both Captain Marvel. In DC, Shazam was called Captain Marvel before becoming Shazam. Captain Marvel, I believe, was Miss Marvel before being Captain Marvel. I don't know. I don't have the history in my head, and I'm not about to look it up because that would be someone who prepares for podcasts, and I don't do that. But Shazam, surprisingly, was a hit. I think a lot of people were surprised by how good it was, surprised by how much they liked it, and it made probably more money than they expected it to. If you don't know what Shazam is, it's a really fun concept. It's basically about a boy called Billy Batson. He's about 13 years old in that first Shazam movie, probably maybe 15, I don't know. The age varies a little bit. But he manages to get hold of power from an ancient wizard that when he yells Shazam, he gains the power of all these gods. He essentially becomes Superman. But when he turns into this person, when he says Shazam, he ages up. So he becomes a man to fight the evils that he goes up against. But he's still a kid. He doesn't turn into a man with a man-aged brain and attitude and thoughts. He's still a 13-year-old boy running around going, oh my god, this is so cool, man. Which makes for a very intriguing premise and a very intriguing way to execute a superhero movie. Not for everybody. I remember my parents saw this and were like, I don't like it. It's too strange for me. But me personally, I thought it was pretty great. It was directed by David F. Sandberg, who notoriously is a horror director as well. So in between your fairly happy-go-lucky, it's a super kid in a man's body using his superpowers to try and buy a beer for his brother. You also had demons coming out of the ground and murdering people in business offices, throwing them out of buildings, pulling their eyes from their sockets. Really terrifying stuff. It was an interesting balance, which sometimes worked and sometimes didn't. But it was a fun origin movie for Billy, learning how to use his powers, learning how to be an actual hero. And by the end of that movie, he had shared his powers with his adoptive foster family. He had many brothers and siblings, sisters, I should say, not siblings, whatever. The main which, of course, being Freddie Freeman, played by Jack Dylan Grazer, who was like his sidekick for most of the movie, but also Darla, Eugene, Pedro, Mary. They all become their own team, the Shazam family, to fight evil as superheroes. Of course, crazy, good reaction. Shazam 2's commissioned, but then, pandemic and things, delays, all of that stuff. From the way the movie's set, 2 years is supposed to have passed between those two movies. But it's been 2022, 4 years. 4 years since this movie came out. So a bit of a wait. But here we are now. Shazam Fury of the Gods basically picks up that premise that we left it at the end with the superhero family trying to work together. In this instance, Billy's trying to be the responsible leader who brings his family together. He's all about, as a family, we fight together or not at all. But everybody's pulling in their own different directions. Freddie wants to be his own superhero and do things solo. Mary just wants to go off to college and make friends. The other kids are having their own interests, which don't really align with Billy. At the same time, these superpowered women appear. They are gods. They are the daughters of Atlas. Due to the events of the first film, they have managed to break into our world. And they want the powers of the Shazam family to avenge their father, Atlas. And depending on which sister you're focusing on, they want to get a hold of the Tree of Life for a specific thing. I can't get too much into it because it spoils the nature of these sisters, their goals in the movie, their arcs, their personalities, all of that stuff. So Shazam and friends have to go up against them while dealing with their own personal struggles. The wizard from the first Shazam, played by Jimon Hunsu, is back. Apparently he didn't die in the first one. He's there along for the ride. And being a DCEU movie, it also exists in that world. So you get name drops of Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Flash, Batman, all of that stuff. Again, directed by David F. Sandberg. I think that's the right way I'm saying his name. If it's David O. Sandberg or something, I apologize. Again, though, I don't really care. Now, knee-jerk reactions. I really liked this movie. It's not as much fun as Dungeons & Dragons was yesterday, but it was a fun movie. As I said before, we're lacking in fun movies these days, so something like this is a treat. And it's miles better than Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which is interesting these days. You tend to get more successful DC movies than MCU. Not that MCU is unsuccessful, but MCU is sort of doing the same thing again and again, whereas DC, you never really know what you're going to get. Are you going to get something incredible like The Suicide Squad or The Batman? Or are you going to get something so-so like Wonder Woman 1984 or Black Adam? You really don't know until you see the movie. I think I liked it more than the first Shazam. The first Shazam I quite enjoyed, but I found the balance between the humor and the horror a bit all over the place. And there's one thing which carried over into this movie, but not so much because of the nature of this movie, which I'll get into. The first movie was about Billy's character development from being a foster kid who's on the run, who doesn't get close to people because he's been hurt by his mother and father abandoning him in different ways, all of that stuff. But over the course of the movie, he learns to grow and accept and love this new foster family that he's been welcomed into. So there was a nice balance between Billy as the boy and then Billy in Zachary Levi's body as the superhero, trying to learn how to be a superhero, to answer the call to battle and not just use his powers to goof off and have fun. With this one, though, the movie really kicks off, much like Dungeons, it kicks off and doesn't really let up. There's not a lot of moment to take a breath and breathe. Once everything kicks off at the start and the villains are known and the situation is at hand for the superheroes, it's really just the whole movie them playing catch up and trying to get up on and defeat these daughters of Atlas, which I really appreciate. I like when things are moving and there's no lulls in the story, because this movie is 2 hours and 10 minutes. So if you're going to be that long, keep my attention. And the movie it had my attention for the whole movie. But as a result of that, Zachary Levi and Asher Angel, the balance between adult Billy and young Billy is completely tipped. I'd say Asher Angel has about 4 scenes in this movie as young Billy. Otherwise, the rest of it is Zachary Levi, which is fine in itself. I prefer when he's Zachary Levi, because that means you're getting the comedy, you're getting the superhero stuff, and the action. So that's fine by me. The problem is, I've always had an issue with the difference between the portrayal of Billy that Zachary Levi and Asher Angel do. Asher Angel is perfectly fine playing Billy. He does what he's supposed to do. He's playing a young kid dealing with troubles and all of that stuff. But when he turns into Zachary Levi is also very good at playing a kid in a superhero's body, marveling at his powers and being overwhelmed by the people he has to go up against. But he's not good at playing the Billy that Asher Angel portrays in his body, if that makes sense. If he were playing, for instance, Freddie Freeman in here, he's a bit of a goof. So when Zachary Levi is acting, you'd be more inclined to think that would be Freddie if Freddie were in Shazam's body. But the Billy that we know, he doesn't behave in the same way that Zachary Levi behaves as him in the adult body. Now, that might be a nitpick, but because Asher Angel is used so briefly in this movie, when he is on screen and he is being Billy, the difference is jarring. So again, that's not a huge thing. It doesn't ruin the movie for me at all. But it's interesting that they've focused on one side of Billy's aspect so much that the other one stands out even more than the first one. But what I really, really like about this movie is the ensembleness of it all. Shazam is still the main character. It's still Billy's movie. Billy is our protagonist. He's the one who goes through the character arc and the changes in this movie to not only accept that he can't do things alone, but also to not cling to people and make them do things that they want to do. Like, it's a really interesting arc, which I think you'll really appreciate when you go and see this movie. But the whole family, Darla, Freddie, Mary, Eugene, Pedro, they're a good superhero squad. I really like them together, and they all get moments to shine. They all have unique personalities and their own character things to do in the movie. They all have these different things that pay off, whether it's Darla's love of unicorns, or what's his name, Eugene mapping out the doors in their lair. They all have something that is important to the story, and there is a nice balance between the kids being on screen and their adult versions being on screen as well, with the exception of Mary, who's played by the same actor for both. Semantics, really, which is good. It's nice that they don't focus too much on one side, that you forget about the other, with the exception of Billy, which is ironic. But I really like them as a group, as characters. I think they're a really good family. The mum and dad in the movie, unfortunately, are really pushed aside, unlike the first one, to a point where I forgot they were in the movie until they showed up to be a part of the big final hectic battle thing at the end. But for example, like the Rock of Eternity, I think is what it's called. In the first movie, that's where Billy falls into and the wizard gives him the powers of Shazam. But in this movie, they've turned it into their base of operations, their lair. And it looks like a Goonies style sort of. It looks like what would happen if kids had access to a completely inaccessible, magical, TARDIS style world. You know, they put pictures on the wall. It's full of junk food. They have their meetings, which is very reminiscent of YouTube startup companies where they have meetings every 2 days when they don't really need meetings, and meetings that could be emails. It's a lot of fun, and I really liked that. Again, as I said with Dungeons and Dragons, it's nice when movies are fun, and they're not just movies for the sake of, we have to make the next Shazam movie, so here it is. You can tell watching this one that there was a story that wanted to be told, an idea that was had from the beginning, and the execution works well. In terms of the other characters besides the Shazam family, I really liked Jumon Hunsu as the wizard. He's a bit different in this one. He's playing it very silly. He's playing it for laughs, but his comedic timing works so well that it's kind of like when Chris Hemsworth's Thor shifted between Dark World and Ragnarok. He does it so well that you actually prefer this side of him. He's got a really good rapport with Freddy. They spend a lot of the movie together, and just simple stuff like him just refusing to call him Freddy and calling him Jeff, he runs around in a cloak the whole movie. He looks like he's about to fall off the whole time. It's really well done, and I really liked him in it, which was great. And our villains of the movie, the daughters of Atlan, Helen Mirren, Lucy Liu, and Rachel Ziegler, Rachel from West Side Story. They're a good dynamic as well. They're not just villains that show up to be villains. Each one has their own personality and their own drive in the movie, their own intentions for what they want to do in the movie, that pushes them in vastly different directions as the movie goes on. It also leads to them in conflict with each other. I do think Helen Mirren is a little wasted of all of them. You know, she was the one I was looking forward to see the most, and she's probably of the three the one that gets the least to do, but she also has the most commanding screen presence. So whenever she is there, you're like, that's Helen Mirren. And she's got really good comedic timing here as well, which I really appreciated. Again, because it's directed by Sandberg, though, you're slapped in the face with some real horror aspects, which doesn't really work for me because of the themes and stuff of this movie, which is Billy as a kid, being a superhero, the comedy of them Goonies style trying to figuring things out. But then, oh my god, the daughters of Atlas just massacred a room full of innocent people at a museum. They just murdered them. There is a lot of collateral damage in this movie. There is a lot of people that get killed and maimed and die in a horrible ways. And this is Philadelphia, so it's not like a made up place like Gotham City as well. And it's just so jarring compared with the tone of the rest of the movie. Again, it's the same problem I had with the first Shazam, but because this one probably has a lot more fun with more kids being involved in the Shazam story. When you then turn around and see that woman over there? Yep, she's impaled. See that guy over there? Yep, he just jumped off that building and he splattered on the ground. It doesn't gel particularly well for me. But again, that's just me personally. You may not have a problem with that, and it's not going to ruin the movie for anyone, I think. It just might make you go, Jesus Christ, okay. The thing that hangs over this whole movie, though, of course, is the imminent demise of the DCEU, which means things in this movie which are referencing the larger scale world do not work for me, because it's like, why should I care? You know, Shazam's constantly going on about how he feels belittled by the other superheroes, and he wants to be a part of the Justice League, but no one ever reaches out to him. He's not as fast as the Flash, or he's not as cool as Aquaman or Batman or whatever. And I'm just like, okay, but I don't care, because this world's about to end. You could argue, I've heard reviews say that, oh no, this Shazam could exist in the new DCU because, you know, you don't see Batman and Aquaman. He might not be referencing Jason Momoa or Ben Affleck. But one particular Justice League member is brought up a lot in this movie, and the design of that character is very, very specifically the character from the DCEU movies. So you cannot escape that this movie is in that world, and that world is about to collapse and die. So you're like, ugh, get that out of here. Don't need it. Shazam's movie can be perfectly fine without having all of this stuff in there, because it doesn't really work. Which means I never really talk about post-credits in reviews, but specifically for this one, the mid-credits, post-credits scene means absolutely nothing to me. It wasn't very funny, and it involved characters and references to things which will lead to nothing. So, whatever. However, the second post-credits scene right at the end is objectively funny. I can't talk about it, but once you see it, and it's in reference to post-credit scenes from previous movies and how they turn out, and all about expectation versus reality and setting things up to go absolutely nowhere. It's almost like it's very tongue-in-cheek with what just happened in the previous post-credit scene with what's coming up. But I think you'll get a kick out of it. I certainly did, especially with the whole DCEU and how it has been executed and its imminent demise very, very, very soon. Overall, though, Shazam! Fury of the Gods was a really fun time, and I had a good time watching it easily. I definitely think I enjoyed it more than the first Shazam, and it's definitely up there in the higher end of DCEU films. I give it an 8 out of 10. Again, not as fun as Dungeons, but a lot better than Ant-Man or any of the other stuff I've seen this year that's not Creed 3. Go and see it. I don't know if anyone wants to. I was the only one in my theater for this one. Maybe people don't know what's come out, but I'll be interested to see how the box office results are this weekend. But if you're looking for anything to do and you're really strapped for ideas, this would not be a waste of your time. It's a good 2 hours. It doesn't feel its length. It's a fun time. It's action-packed. The ball's rolling the whole way through. Great characters. Some really great comedy. Some really great emotional character arcs for these people. A bit of odd horror thrown in, but stuff that you can get by. Absolutely. Have a good time if you see it. That's not me telling you. I think you will. Anyway, the heat's getting to me, so we're going to sign off there. Thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed. I will be back next week again for another movie review, which means your usual Tuesday episode will be delayed a day to allow me to go see it at the advanced screening. But it's John Wick Chapter 4. I am very excited to see this one. I absolutely love the John Wick movies. John Wick 3, the last one, is one of my all-time favorite movies. And it left me so excited for more. And now we're finally here after waiting 3 years, 19, 20, no, 4 years, the same length as Shazam. There you go. Been waiting ages for this. I hear very, very, very good things. So I'm very excited to go see that and then come home and hopefully review it for you in a room that's not literally making me melt. But until then, I hope you have a good time over the weekend. If you see Shazam, I hope you enjoy. But otherwise, I'll catch you on the next Spliced In Later. Adios, muchachos.